The Shema is an integral part of the morning Shacharit and evening Mariv service. Together with a number of important prayers that surround it, it is said immediately before the Amidah, the standing meditation. From the wording itself, it is obvious that the Shema was meant to be a meditation. If the only significance of the Shema were to declare that God is one, then the opening words, quote, "Listen, Yisrael," would be redundant. But the Shema itself is telling us to listen and hear the message with every fiber of our being. It is telling us to open our perceptions completely so as to experience God's unity. It is also significant that the name Israel is used in the beginning of the declaration. This name was given to Yaakov after he wrestled with the angel on his way home to Canaan. According to the Torah, the name Israel means, quote, "he who contends with the divine," Genesis 32:29. In the Midrash and the Zohar, there is a discussion about whether the angel with which Yaakov wrestled was a good angel or an evil one. But the main point is that when a person contends with the spiritual, that person opens themselves up to both good and evil, which means wrestling with the forces of good as well as those of evil. A number of commentaries see Yaakov's experience as having taken place in a meditative state. Yaakov did not physically wrestle with the angel, but he perceived a spiritual being while meditating. The name Yisrael that Yaakov received would then pertain to his entering into a spiritual state and contending with his experiences there. It is precisely when one is in a meditative state that one has contact with the spiritual on an intimate level. The Shema addresses itself to such a seeker and calls the seeker by the name Israel. The Shema is addressing the Israel in each of us. This Israel is the part of us that yearns to transcend the boundaries of the physical and seeks out the spiritual. The Shema tells this Israel to listen, to quiet down the mind completely, and open it up to a universal message of God's unity. However, the only time a person can listen perfectly without any interference is in the meditative state. When we say Adonai, we are speaking of that for which the mind does not even have a category. Yet, in the very next word, we call Adonai, quote, our God, Eloheinu. We recognize that we can relate to God and experience his closeness to such an extent that we can call God ours. This is a very remarkable concept. We can think about the infinite and still call it ours. The fact that God allows us to call him our God is the greatest possible gift. The Shema ends with Adonai is one, Adonai Echad. Here we are saying that no matter how many different ways we experience the divine, they are all one and all have one source. We recognize that there is a basic oneness in the universe and beyond. And in our search for the transcendental, it is precisely this oneness that we are seeking. We see in God the most absolute unity imaginable, the oneness that unifies all creation. The more we realize this, the more we begin to see that on an ultimate level there is no plurality. If there is no plurality, then we are also one with God. When saying the word one, echad, in the Shema, one can realize this in a deep sense. This situation is a paradox. To say that I exist and that God exists and that I am one with God is like saying 1 + 1 = 1, which is of course logically impossible. Nevertheless, we cannot say that logic is higher than God. Quite the contrary. Just as God created everything else, God also created logic. Logic is a tool of God's, but God is never bound by it. Therefore, if God wants 1 plus 1 to be 1, it is no problem. If God wants a person to be one with God and still be able to experience it, it is also possible for him. The most powerful expression of will is love. This is also an integral part of the Shema. Every Hebrew letter has a numerical value corresponding to its position in the alphabet. The value of echad, the Hebrew word for one, is 13. This also is the numerical value of the word ahava, which is the Hebrew word for love. Love is the power that breaks down barriers and unifies opposites. Two people who are deeply in love become one. There are a number of prayers or, quote, blessings that surround the Shema when it is said as part of the morning service. The last words before the Shema itself are, "Blessed are you, Adonai, who chose his people Israel in love." Therefore, the word immediately before the Shema is love, in the context of a blessing that speaks of the love that God has for his people. Immediately after the Shema is the commandment, quote, "You shall love God your Lord with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might." Deuteronomy 6:5. This commandment speaks of the love that we must have for God. Therefore, the Shema is placed between two loves, God's love for us and our love for God. Both of these loves suggest the unity to be found in the Shema. But if the words are said very slowly, and if a person prepares themselves mentally, the Shema can be an extremely powerful meditation. Indeed, the Torah itself prescribes that the Shema be said twice daily, and it seems highly probable that this was originally prescribed as a short daily meditation for all of Israel. The Shema can be said very slowly. You can dwell on each word for as long as 15 or 20 seconds. During the silences between the words, let the meaning of each word penetrate your innermost being. It is preferable to say it as part of the service, especially the morning service, which provides a proper setting and introduction to the Shema. In this service, the Shema is preceded by two prayers, or quote, blessings, as the Talmud calls them. The first blessing begins with a description of the astronomical world. The mind soars to the sun, the moon, the stars, and beyond, and contemplates the vast reaches of space, immense beyond comprehension. Yet, while one meditates on the vastness of the astronomical world, one sees it as all working to do God's will. The mind then transcends the astronomical world and reaches up to the spiritual realm, to the world of the angels. We join the angels in their daily praise to God. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole world is filled with his glory. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzavaot, Malo Kol Haaretz Kevodo, which is Isaiah 6:3. And then, blessed be God's glory from his place. Baruch Kavod Adonai Minkomo. One's mind reaches higher and higher, joining the highest angels in their quest for the divine. Then one enters the second blessing, which speaks of the, quote, world of love. Here we meditate on the love that God has shown us and how he drew us close to him through the Torah and the commandments. We become aware of this love and meditate on it, drawing it into our innermost being. Then we recite the Shema itself. When the Shema is said as part of the morning service, one automatically goes through all these levels. In either case, the Shema becomes not only a meditation, but a peak experience of love and closeness to God. The words immediately following the Shema are usually translated in the imperative, quote, "You shall love God your Lord," implying that this is a commandment. However, the words can equally well be translated as, quote, "You will love God your Lord," as a simple statement. The words imply that if we listen and hear the message that God is ours and that God is one, then we will automatically love God. Love for God follows as a natural consequence to the experience of his essence and unity.